Hello, my name is Mark Pace, and today's lecture we will be discussing the role of psychology in dance education and training. We will look at the psychological demands and why is it important. We'll discuss perfectionism. Then we will look at how to evaluate and the practical solutions for the teacher. And finally, a task. Last year, when David McAllister of the Australian Ballet stepped down from his directorship after 3 decades, his advice for anyone aspiring to be an artistic director: study psychology. Even though he'd been a dancer for 2 decades himself, he found being on the other side, he was a challenging aspect of his directorship to work with dancers to understand their fears and their challenges. Dancers are trained to move in complex, highly technical ways, and of course injuries happen, but these also can occur to psychological and psychosocial factors. These factors include low levels of coping skills, high state trait anxiety, and negative life events. Consequently, it is important for dancers and those who work with them to be aware of the variety of psychosocial and psychological factors and the potential influence they may have on that dancer's injury risk. When we're discussing the biopsychosocial model, we know that we're just not teaching a skill, we're teaching the whole body. Coaching is much more than teaching the X and O's, as we've just talked about. It is about the communication, which in turn is the vehicle for relating with one another and the foundation on which relationships are initiated, maintained, negotiated, and dissolved. There is direct literature from performance psychology that backs the view that the teacher or coach is an instrument in building a performance, self-esteem, personal growth, and general well-being. It has been found that the teacher or coach is viewed as a person who is likely to create a sense of proximity, thus enabling the performer to seek support from comfort from the teacher or coach should they have difficulties in their performance genre or any part of their own life. So we know Maria Fay discusses in her book Mind and Body that the teacher is not only to prepare the dancer's body, but to prepare them to cope in their performance life. Lev Gajkowski said that children generally have great confidence in their teachers and influence very often remains of lasting value. This is a lovely book about dance pedagogy, a very small book, and if you'd like to read these 2 books, please go ahead, as they are interesting, even though they are not dance research. They are written by by people with a lot of tacit knowledge. Here we see a picture of Miss Abby. She is the epitome of what bad dance practice is: screaming, yelling, comparing students, belittling them, teaching by fear. If you don't know the series, go and have a quick look, as it's quite amusing, and I do hope it's a lot of theatre. Let's get back to our topic. Now, psychological variables have been shown to influence the occurrence of injury and post-injury outcomes. Psychological factors associated with both risk and outcome of dance injury included stress, psychological stress, disordered eating, and coping. We know that negative life stresses and psychological stress have been associated with an increased incidence and frequency and duration of a dance injury. An injury caused by stress and anxiety happens often prior to an important event such as an exam, performance. Just ask yourselves, has this happened to you? Or have you seen it happen in your teaching practice? Now, there's a lot of question, does these bad psychological teaching practices still happen? And sadly, it does. 2 years ago, Vienna State Opera's Ballet Academy was hit by an abuse scandal, where it was said that students were hit and kicked, scratched, pulled their hair, told to smoke to lose weight. They had received no psychological or nutritional support, and many of the dancers had developed bulimia or anorexia. Last year in Berlin State Ballet School confronts allegations of abuse, where it was told the director had been not supporting the students, and the same thing was happening, what was happening in Vienna. And then just last year in our dear Scotland's Ballet West, an esteemed dance academy in the east of Scotland had to close down amid sexual abuse claims. I would like you to have a look at this small film as we can see how this teacher and from the east side, from school of the academy in Perm, is teaching and how it affects her students.
Не двигаются в стол. Ты ноги как бомбовозка, у тебя как этот, вот знаешь, самолет летит, бомбит, вот такие у тебя тяжелые ноги. Да брось ты легко, Оксана, ногу, встань с правильной ноги. Что ты как чучело? Бросай ногу, легче, раз, легче, вот так. Да ты же ведь идиотка, ни разу так не сделала, ни разу. Я говорю, что вы нахалки, дармоедки, взяли. Это чтобы вас заставили работать на наш класс, это нужно сдохнуть, чтобы хоть что-нибудь. Оп, кидай! Вот низом-то кидай носочек, правильно, Маша. Еще легче, Маша. Оп! Бросай! Раз, и, два, и, бросай! Вот так, и, раз, бросай!
Здравствуй, моя самая прекрасная, добрая и самая-самая любимая мамочка. Мамочка, я уже просто не могу выдерживать эти улановские нервные срывы на своей шкуре. Не понимаю, чего она от меня хочет. Я уже и так пыжусь изо всех сил, а она кричит: у тебя, Скорик, нет мозгов. Мне страшно надоедает, когда Людмила Георгиевна меня обзывает весь урок Скорик. Бесит. Может, она действительно хочет, чтобы я уехала домой? Просто так она бы мне не вдалбливала. Мне здесь делать нечего, в Пермь езжай. И если честно, я уже подумываю об этом. Но на самом деле, что я здесь забыла? Мамочка, пожалуйста, помоги мне. Раздражает. Каждый год одно и то же. Я не хочу остаться без нервов окончательно.
Now, what is interest there is that this young dancer is now a principal with Mariinsky Ballet Company in Russia, and it would be quite interesting to hear her views on her ballet training and those methods and how it affected her during her career and affecting her now. Let's move on and discuss about the dance teacher. Norden Bates, in her article Perfection or for Creativity, tells us that teachers are often important role models. They might also hold significant power over students and their progress. As such, it stands to reason that they can affect their dancers' perfectionism. Indeed, a case study with a recently retired ballerina indicates a strong influence of both teachers and other aspects of the dance environment concerning her perfectionism. In this study, several of the participants spoke of a rubbing off effect whereby perfectionist teachers nurtured perfectionism in their students. It was described as being highly problematic, with teaching becoming about the teacher rather than the students. Some even used strategies to avoid it, such as "I'm trying to separate my ego from my knowledge." One participant explained, "Nothing is good. Everything has to be that single right way." It means they work themselves to death, and when people come to watch, it is the teacher's outward perfectionism which is the important thing, through what the students show. And you see that this teacher isn't happy. They are never satisfied and often project it onto their students. We know that in order to provide a positive dance setting, dance teachers need to be aware of their behavior and words and how they can contribute to creating a positive or negative learning experience. We should not assume the role of psychologists because we are not psychologists. Of course, we were not trained in that. But we need to be aware of when a dancer or a student needs professional help and guide them towards the professional services. In the same way that dancers, leaders can learn about best practice in minimizing injury without actually treating the injury, they can learn about how to and why to promote mental and emotional well-being in their classes in order to support reduced injury occurrence and improve potential. So just as like we don't run and manipulate an ankle when someone has fallen over and sprained their ankle, we don't do that as psychologists. We don't intervene. We guide the student or dancer. Now let's just quickly go over self-determination theory. In dance, it has been shown that basic needs are more likely to be satisfied when the environment is perceived to be autonomy, supportive, and task involvement. Dancers with more satisfied basic needs are reported to have a more positive effect. One factor that appears to influence the motivational processes outlined in self-determination theory is perfectionism. Now, perfectionism is a multi-dimensional personality trait characterized for exceedingly high standards accompanied by harsh criticism. Striving for perfection may underpin personally important accomplishments that align with one's values and therefore relate to other adaptive outcomes. So, how can we know and help the dancer to become autonomous in her or his development? A dancer can learn strategies that can be personally applied to support psychology well-being. We can help the dancer to recognize the areas in which they can improve. Now, this can provide two benefits. It can foster development and it can enhance their strength. It may help to also think of dancing in terms of a mathematical equation. Strength and weakness equals overall dance performance. So we have weakness and we learn from those weaknesses, and we have strengths. Now, if dancers focus on the present moment aspects, such as artistry, and as dance pedagogues, we include a creative exploration in classes, as doing so may help reduce perfectionistic thinking. Let's discuss motivational climates. The first we'll discuss is mastery-orientated climates. Now, this happens when individuals perceive a situational focus on self-improvement, learning and task mastery through the emphasis of effort and personal progression from teachers and coaches. Such an environment induces a task-orientated focus, and individuals typically adopt adaptive achievement strategies, such as investing high amounts of effort, choosing challenging tasks, and demonstrating persistence even when facing difficulty. Now, in contrast, if individuals perceive a focus on normative criteria, social comparison, competition, and the unacceptability of mistakes, a perceived performance-orientated climate prevails. Now, a performance-orientated climate normally occurs as a function from teachers and coaches or instructors who selectively praise more able students, emphasize competition above effort and personal progression, and promote the unacceptability of mistakes. Perceived performance-orientated climates typically induce an ego-orientated situational focus of maladaptive achievement strategies, such as low levels of effort, avoidance of challenging tasks, and an increased likelihood that individuals will give up in challenging situations. Higher perceptions of a performance-orientated climate could predict a stronger endorsement of an ego orientation. Higher perceptions of a performance-orientated climate could predict high levels of trait anxiety and predict higher neurotic perfection tendencies. Now, a higher perception of a mastery climate could predict a stronger endorsement of a task-orientated climate. It has been suggested there are two types of perfectionism. One is said to be driven by a desire for success and to be characterized by a positive approach, orientated, striving for perfection and a setting of challenging goals. Another form of perfectionism is characterized by a far less favorable avoidance-orientated, striving to avert negative outcomes, with concern over mistakes and doubts about actions being defining features. Despite efforts to avoid negative outcomes on the part of these individuals, this form of perfectionism has been found to result in a range of maladaptive effects, notably in the area of well-being. This is the end of the first part of the lecture. The next section will look at perfectionism from a more multidimensional aspect. Thank you.